you, Charles. No, Swift's still in court, won't be back just yet. Yes, the Shuttleworth case. What? With Myers for the prosecution and Banter trying it? Oh, he's been giving judgment for close to 2 hours already. No, not to Thursday this evening. We're all full up. Could you possibly give an appointment tomorrow? No, couldn't possibly. I'm expecting Mayhew and Bridgefield, you know, any minute now. Oh well, so long.
Shall I make the tea, Mr.
It is
Carter?
hardly time yet.
It is by my watch.
Then your watch is wrong.
I set it right by the radio.
Then the radio is wrong.
Oh, the radio, Mr. Carter, that couldn't be wrong.
This watch was given to me by my father. It never gains no losers. They don't make watches like this nowadays. Oh, what is this? You're all typing. Typical. Always mistakes. See, right here, you've left out a word.
Well, just one word. Anyone might do that.
The word you've left out, Greta, is the word not. The omission of it entirely alters the sentence.
That's rather funny when you come to think of it.
Not in the least funny, Greta. Last week, how I told you about the celebrated case of Brandon Horsfall. A case of a will and a trust fund, and entirely owning up to a careless piece of copying by a clerk.
Wrong one got the money, I remember.
Woman divorced 15 years previously, absolutely contrary to the intention of the testator, which his lordship himself admitted. But they couldn't do anything about it. The wording had to stand.
I think that's rather funny too.
Council's chambers are no place to be funny in. The law, Greta, is a serious matter and should be treated accordingly.
You wouldn't think so. Didn't some of the jokes Sturgis made?
That kind of joke is the prerogative of the bench.
And I'm always reading in the paper. Laughter in the court.
That's not caused by one of the judge's remarks, who final threatened to have the whole court cleared.
You notice I read in the paper the other day, Mr. Carter? The law's an ass. I'm not being rude. It's a quotation.
Quotation of a facetious nature, not meant to be taken seriously. You can make the tea now. Now, Greta.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Greta. Oh, Mrs. Mayhew of Mayhew and Bridgefield should be here shortly. Mr. Leonard Vowell is also presented. They may come together or separately.
Leonard Vowell? Why, that's the name. It was in the paper.
The tea, Greta.
As to communicators, you might be able to give them some useful information. It was only last... Oh, yes, the tea.
Girls, inaccurate, sensational. Let me know what the temple's coming to.
Mrs. Mayhew. Sit down, Mr. Vowell. Good afternoon, Carter.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Mayhew. Swift shouldn't be long, but you can never tell if Mr. Just Matt trying it. I'll go straight out to the robing room and tell them that you're here with Mr.
Mr. Leonard Vowell, thank you, Carter. I'm afraid our appointment was rather short notice, but in this case, time is rather urgent. How's the lumbago?
Oh, I only feel it when the wind is in the east. Thank you for remembering, Mrs. Mayhew.
Sit down, Mr. Vowell.
Thank you, but I'd rather walk about. This sort of thing makes me feel a bit jumpy.
Yes, very probably.
Would you like a cup of tea, Mrs.
No,
Mayhew?
thank you, don't mind if I do. Sorry. But what I mean is, this seems so much like a bad dream in that I'll wake up presently.
Yes, I suppose one might feel like that.
I mean, murder. I really can't believe it. It just seems so silly.
Silly, Mr. Vowell.
Well, yes. I mean, it's just silly. I'm a friendly sort of chap and all that. I get on with people. I'm not the sort of person that's known for, well, doing anything violent. I mean, but I suppose it would be all right, won't it? I mean, you don't get convicted in this country for things you've ever done.
Well, our English judicial system is, in my opinion, the finest in the world.
But there was that case of, what was his name? Adolf Beck. I read about it only in the paper just the other day. After he'd been in prison for years, they found out it was another chap called Smith. They gave him a free pardon, and that's the thing that doesn't seem right to me. Giving someone a pardon for something they haven't done.
It is the necessary
But it
legal
doesn't
term.
seem right to me.
Well, the important thing is that Beck was set at liberty.
Yes, I guess it was all right for him, but if it had been murder... If it had been murder, it would have been too late. He would have been hanged.
Now, Mr. Vowell, there's really no need to
I'm
take a
sorry,
moment.
ma'am. It's rather getting the wind up.
We'll try and keep calm. So Wilfred Roberts will be here presently, and I want you to tell your story to him exactly as you told it to me.
Yes, ma'am.
But, meantime, perhaps you might fill out a little bit more of the detail, background. You are at present, I understand, out of a job.
Yes, but I've got a few pounds put by. If you can just see a way until I can pay...
I'm not thinking of legal fees. It's just the picture I'm trying to clear your surroundings and circumstance. How long have you been unemployed?
About a couple of months.
And what were you doing before that?
I was working in a motor servicing firm, kind of a mechanic, that's what I was.
How long had you worked there?
About 3 months.
Were you discharged?
No, I wasn't. I quit. Had words with the foreman, proper old... What that is, he was a mean sort of chap. Always picking on you.
And before that?
I worked in a petrol station, but things got a bit awkward and I...
Awkward? In what way?
Well, the boss's daughter, she was only a kid, but she took a well sort of fancy to me, and there's nothing there that shouldn't have been, but the old man got a bit fed up and said I'd better go. He was quite nice about it, gave me a good check and all that, and let's see, before that I was selling egg beaters on commission.
Indeed.
And a rotten job they were too. I could have invented a better egg beater myself. You're thinking I'm a bit of a drifter, ma'am. It's true in a way, but not really. I mean, doing my army service unsettled me a bit, that and being abroad. I was in Germany. It was fine there. That's where I met my wife. She's an actress. But ever since I've come back to this country, I just can't seem to settle down properly. I like working on cars best. That's interesting, that is, and I don't exactly know what I want to do.
Wilfred.
Carter told me I was in court. Banter really surpassed himself. And this is Mr.
This
Fu.
is Leonard.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do? Won't you sit down? How's the family, June?
Oh, Molly's got a touch of this 24-hour flu.
That's too bad.
Yes, pitiful. Did you win your case, Wilfred?
I'm pleased to see I did.
It always gives you satisfaction to beat Myers, doesn't it?
Gives me satisfaction to beat anyone.
But especially Myers.
Especially Myers. She's an irritating woman. She always seems to bring out the worst in me.
Well, that would appear to be mutual. You irritate her because you hardly ever let her finish a sentence.
Well, she irritates me because of that mannerism of hers. This that drives me to distraction. And she will call me Roballs. Roballs. But still, she's a very able advocate. If only she'd remember not to ask leading questions when she knows bloody well that she shouldn't. But let's get on.
Yes. I brought Bull here because I want you to hear his story exactly as he told it to me. There is some urgency in the matter, it seems.
Oh.
Well, my wife thinks I'm going to be arrested. She's much cleverer than I am, so she may be right.
Arrested for what?
Well, for murder.
It's the case of Miss Emily French. You've probably seen the reports in the press. She was a maiden lady living at home, but for an elderly housekeeper at a house at Hampstead. On the night of October 14th, the housekeeper came home and found that apparently the place had been broken into and that her mistress had been coshed on the back of the head and killed. That is right.
That's right. It's quite an ordinary sort of thing to happen nowadays. And then just the other day I was reading in the paper that the police were anxious to interview a Mr. Leonard Vole, as they thought he might be able to give them useful information, for he had visited her early in the evening in question. So naturally I went along to the police station and they asked me a lot of questions.
Did they caution you?
I don't know. They asked if I'd like to make a statement and it would be written down and used in court. Is that cautioning me?
Oh, well, it can't be helped now.
Anyway, it sounded bloody silly to me, and I told them all I could, and they seemed quite satisfied, and they were very polite about it. But when I got home and told Romaine, my wife, that is, about it, well, she seemed to get the wind up. She seemed to think that they had got a hold of the idea that I had done it. So I came along to a solicitor in hopes that you would be able to tell me what I ought to do about it.
Now, did you know Miss French well?
Well, I mean, she practically spoiled me, and well, it was kind of a bit of a bore sometimes. She positively fussed over me, but she meant it all very well, and when I heard that she'd been killed, I was awfully upset because I really got fond of her.
1 minute.
Tell Sir Wilfrid, just as you told me, how it was you came to make Miss French's acquaintance.
Well, it was one day in Oxford Street. I saw an old lady crossing the road carrying a load of parcels, and in the middle of the road she dropped them. I tried to get a hold of them again and nearly found a bus on top of her. Just managed to get to the curb safely. Well, I went into the street, got the parcels, tied them up, wiped off the mud, and generally soothed the old dear, you know, that sort of thing.
And she was grateful.
Oh yes, very grateful. Thanked me and all that. One would have thought I saved her life instead of her parcels.
So there was actually no question of you having saved her life.
Oh no, nothing heroic, and that was the last I thought I'd seen of her.
Cigar?
Oh, no thanks, sir, never do. But by an extraordinary coincidence, 2 days later, I happened to be sitting behind her in the theatre. We began to talk, and she recognized me, and she asked me to come and see her.
And you did go and see her?
Oh, yes. She asked me to name a day specifically, and I said I'd go the following Saturday, as it seemed rather churlish to refuse.
And so you went to her house at...
Hampstead.
Yes.
Hampstead, yes, right. What did you know about her when you first went to the house?
Well, nothing really. Only that she lived alone and that she hadn't very many friends, something of that kind.
She lived only with the housekeeper, is that correct?
Yes, she had 8 cats though. The house was beautifully furnished and all that, but that smelled a bit of cat.
Indeed. Now, had you reason to believe that she was well off?
Well, she talked as though she was.
And you yourself?
Oh, I'm practically stony broke, have been for a long time.
Unfortunate.
Yes, it is rather. Oh. You mean people will say I was sucking up to her for her money?
Well, perhaps I shouldn't have phrased it quite like that, but in essence, yes, that is perhaps what people might say.
It really isn't true, you know. I actually felt kind of bad for her. I thought she was lonely. I was raised by an old aunt, my Aunt Betsy, and I like old ladies.
You say old ladies, Mr. Vole, but do you know how old Mrs. French was?
Well, I didn't know, but I read about in the paper after she was murdered. She was 56.
56. You consider that old, Mr. Vole, but I should doubt if Miss French considered herself old.
Ah, but you can't call her a spring chicken now, can you?
No, not. Let's get on then. You went to see Mrs. French frequently?
Oh, yes, I should say once, twice a week, perhaps.
And did you take your wife with you?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Well, I honestly don't think things would have gone down very well if I had.
Do you mean with your wife or with Miss French?
No, with Miss French.
Go on, go on.
You see, she had rather got fond of me.
You mean that she fell in love with you?
Oh, good Lord, no, nothing of the sort. Just sort of pampered me and spoiled me, that sort of thing.
Right. Mr. Vole, I have no doubt part of the police case against you, if there is a case which as of yet we have no reason to believe, will be, why did you, young, good-looking, married, devote so much of your time to an elderly woman with whom you could hardly have much in common?
Yes, I know they'll say I was sucking up to her for her money, but perhaps it's true, but only in a way.
Well, at least you're frank, Mr. Vole. Can you explain a little more clearly?
She made no secret of the fact that she was rolling in money, and as I told you, Romaine and I, that's my wife, are pretty hard up, and I was hoping if we were in a really tight spot that she'd loan us some money, and I'm being honest about it.
Did you ask her for a loan?
No, I didn't. I mean, things weren't desperate, but things do look rather bad for me, don't they?
Did Miss French know that you were married?
Oh, yes.
But she didn't suggest you on any occasion that you should bring your wife with you to see her?
No, she seemed to think that Romaine and I didn't get on.
Did you deliberately give her that impression?
No, I didn't. Indeed, I didn't. But you see, I was afraid to keep dragging Romaine into it, and she might have lost interest if I did. And so, I wasn't really trying to sponge money from her, but you see, there's this gadget I've invented, sort of a cool device for a car. A really good idea it was, and if I was hoping that she would finance it, it would have been her money, and it would have brought her in a lot. Oh, it's very difficult to explain, but I wasn't sponging on her. Really, I wasn't.
What sums of money did you obtain from Miss French at any time?
None at all.
Tell me something about the housekeeper.
Janet Mackenzie. Oh, she was a regular old tyrant, Janet was. Practically bullied poor Miss French. She did her job very well and all that, but the poor old dear couldn't call her soul her own when Miss French was about. Janet didn't like me at all.
Why didn't she like you?
No, I don't know. She didn't like me helping Miss French through business affairs.
Oh. So you helped Miss French with her business affairs?
Yes, she found it a bit difficult to fill up forms, and she was worried about some of her investments. Come to think of it, I helped her with a lot of things like that.
Mr. Vole, I'm going to ask you a very serious question, and it's one to which it is vital I shall have a truthful answer. You're in low water financially. You had the handlings of this lady's affairs. Now, did you at any time convert to your own use the securities that you handled? Oh, no, pause just a moment, Mr. Vole, before you reply, because you see, there are 2 points of view. Either we can make a feature of your probity and honesty, or if you swindled the woman in any way, then we must take the line that you had no motive for murder, seeing as you already had a profitable source of income. As you can see, there are advantages to either point of view. What I want is the truth. Take your time if you like before you reply.
I assure you, Sir Wilfrid, that I played dead straight and you won't find anything to the contrary. Dead straight.
Thank you, Mr. Vole. You relieve my mind greatly. I pay you the compliment of believing that you are far too intelligent to lie over such a vital matter. And now we come to the evening of October the
14th.
14th, yes. Did Miss French ask you to go and see her that night?
As a matter of fact, she didn't, but I'd come across a new kind of gadget and thought it pleased her, so I slipped up there that evening and got there about 7:45. It was Janet Mackenzie's night out, and I thought she might be rather lonely.
It was Janet McKinsey's night out, and you knew that.
Oh yes, I knew Janet always went out on Fridays.
That's not quite so good.
Oh, why not? It seems very reasonable that I choose the evening to go and see her.
Please, just go on, Mr. Fu.
Anyway, I got there at 7:45. She had finished her supper, but I had a cup of coffee with her. After that, we played a game of double teaming, and around 9 o'clock, I said goodnight and went home.
And just a moment. Now, can you prove that, Mr. Fu?
Well, the police mentioned to me that the housekeeper had come home earlier, and she had forgotten something. Well, I think that she heard, or they said that she heard, someone talking with Miss French after 9:30. But whoever it wasn't me, and I can prove that very well, because I was at home with my wife, Romaine, by then. And that's what the police kept asking, come to think of it. Where was I at 9:30? Well, on some days one wouldn't know where one was, but as a matter of fact, I can remember quite well that I had gone straight home, and not gone out again. Yes.
Good. Now, do you live in a flat?
Yes, I've got a tiny maisonette over a shop behind Euston Station.
And did anyone see you returning to that flat?
Oh, I don't think so. On my way home, I didn't see anyone walking by the streets, but does it matter? I mean,
Yes. Might have been an advantage if they had.
I mean, why would it be an advantage? I mean, if she were really killed at 9:30 and I was at home with Romaine by then.
How did you go? How did you go home? By bus underground.
As I said, I walked. It was a fine night, a bit windy. It took me about 25 minutes.
Did you see anyone you knew on the way?
No, but I mean, Romaine would...
Mr. Vole, the evidence of a devoted wife, unsupported by any other evidence, may not be enough.
So you mean people will say that she would lie on my account?
It has been known, Mr. Vole.
Oh, and I'm sure she would too, only in this case, it wouldn't be lying. Oh dear. You believe me, don't you, sir?
Yes, I believe you, Mr. Vole, but you are not going to have to convince me. Just a moment, let me make some notes. All right. Now, Mr. Vole, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Just a moment. Yes, come in.
The evening paper, Sir Wilfrid.
Thank you.
Would you like a cup of tea?
No, thank you. Oh, Vole, would you like a cup?
No, thank you, sir.
No, thank you, Rota.
Mr. Vole, I think it would be advisable for us to have a meeting with your wife.
Oh, my wife? Oh, you mean have a regular old round table conference?
I wonder, Mr. Vole, if you are taking this business quite seriously enough.
I am, really. I am. I'm sorry, it just seems so much like a bad dream. Murder, it's a thing you read about in books and newspapers, but never think it's a thing that can happen to you or affect you in any way. I guess that's why I keep trying to make a joke of it, but it isn't a joke, really.
No, I'm afraid it is not a joke.
But really, I mean, if they really think she was killed at 9:30, I had gone straight home to Romaine, and I swear that she would have been at home by then, and I was at home with Romaine by then. And as you said, I guess she might lie on behalf of me, but you do believe me. You do. You said you did, right?
Yes, Mr. Vole, I believe you, but again, it is not me you will have to convince. You're aware, are you not, that Mrs. French left you a will leaving you all of her money?
Left all her money to me. You're joking.
I am not joking. It's in tonight's evening paper.
Well, I can hardly believe it.
You knew nothing about this?
Absolutely nothing. She never mentioned it.
You're quite sure of that, Mr. Vole?
Yes, I'm very grateful, yet in a way I'd rather wish she hadn't. I mean, things do look rather bad for me now, don't they?
It supplies you with a very adequate motive. That is, assuming that you knew about it, which you say that you didn't. Miss French never talked to you about making a will.
I mean, she said to Janet once, "You're afraid I shall make my will again," but that had nothing to do with me, and it was only a bit of a dust-up between them. Do you think they're going to arrest me?
I think, Mr. Vole, you must prepare yourself for that eventuality.
Oh, Margaret. I mean, if they really think Romaine, as I said, if they think that...
Please, Mr. Vole, don't worry yourself.
You will do the best you can for me, won't you, sir?
I will. Don't
And the
worry.
money side too, that worries me. I've got a few quid put by, but maybe I shouldn't have come to see you in the first place. I don't know if I could pay
I
for things
think
that you have
we
to
shall be able to put up an adequate defense. The court provides for these cases, you know.
I just can't believe it. I can't believe that I, Leonard Vole, will be standing in a witness box saying not guilty, people staring at me. I mean, apparently it was a burglary. The window was smashed and things were strewn about and everything was tossed about. I mean, it seems so much more probable, so the paper said. I mean, there
People
must...
said that things were strewn about.
Yes, I mean, the police must have some reason to suspect me then. I mean, it just seems so much more probable.
Excuse me, Sir Wilfred. Two gentlemen are here asking to see Mr. Vole.
The police?
Yes, sir.
All right, Jane, I'll go and talk to them.
My God, this is it, isn't it?
I'm afraid it may be. But take it easy. Don't lose heart. Make no further statements. Leave it all to us.
But how did they know I was here?
Well, it seems probable that they had a man watching you.
Then they really do suspect me.
I'm sorry to trouble you, sir.
This is Mr. Vole.
Is your name Leonard Vole?
Yes, it is.
I'm Detective Inspector Hearn, and I have here a warrant for your arrest on charge of murdering Emily French on October 14th last. Now, I must warn you that anything you say may be taken down and used in evidence.
Okay, I'm ready.
Good afternoon, Inspector Hunt. I'm Mrs. Mayhew. I'm representing Mr. Vole.
Good afternoon, Miss Mayhew. Very nice to meet you. We'll take him along and we'll charge him now. Thank you. So, Sir Wilfred, very seasonable weather we're having here. Quite a dip of frost last night. Well, I must be going. I didn't mean to inconvenience you.
I am never inconvenienced. I must say, Joe, that man is in a worse mess than he seems to think.
He certainly is. How does he strike you?
Extraordinarily naive. In some ways quite shrewd. Intelligent, I should say, but he certainly doesn't realize the danger of his predicament.
Do you think he did it?
I've no idea. On the whole, I should say not. You agree?
I agree.
Never mind, he seems to have impressed us both favorably. I can't think why, no. I've never heard of the story, and God knows what we're going to do with it. And the only evidence is in his favor is his wife, and who's going to believe a wife?
Well, it has been known to happen.
She's a foreigner too. 9 out of the 12 in the jury believe that the foreigner's lying anyways. She'll be upset and emotional and won't understand what the prosecuting counsel says to her, but we shall have to interview her. Oh, you'll see, she'll have hysterics all over my chambers.
Perhaps you'd prefer not to accept the brief.
Who says that I won't accept it? Just because I point out that the boy has an absolute tomfool story to tell.
But a true one.
It must be a true one. I couldn't be so idiotic if it weren't true. They don't know the facts in black and white, and the whole story is utterly damning. And yet, when you talk to the boy and he blurts out those damning facts, you realize that the whole thing could have happened just as he said. Because I've had the equivalent of an Aunt Bessie, and I loved it dearly. But at least we've got somewhere to go now. Yes?
Mrs. Leonard Vole is here.
Mrs. Vole?
Come here, Greta. You saw that young man. He's just been arrested for murder.
Oh, isn't it exciting?
You think that he did it?
Oh, no, I'm sure he didn't.
Why not?
It's far too nice.
That makes 3 of us. Bring Mrs. Vole in. We're probably 3 credulous fools taken by a young man with a pleasing personality.
Mrs. Vole.
My dear Mrs. Vole.
Are you and Mrs. Mayhew?
Yes, and this is Sir Wilfred Roberts, who has agreed to handle your husband's case for him.
How do you do, Sir Wilfred? I was just coming from your office, Mrs. Mayhew, when they tell me you were here with my husband.
Quite.
Just as I arrived, I thought I saw Leonard getting into a car. There were 2 men with him.
Miss Vole, you must not upset yourself. Won't you sit down?
Thank you.
Now, Mrs. Vole, the important thing is to not give way.
Oh no, I shall not give way.
Then let me tell you, as perhaps you already suspect, your husband has just been arrested.
For the murder of Miss Emily French.
I'm afraid so, but please don't be so upset.
You keep saying that, Sir Wilfred, but I am not upset.
No, I see you have great fortitude.
You may call it that if you like.
The great thing is to be calm and tackle all of this sensibly.
Yes, that suits me very well, but you must not hide anything from me, Sir Wilfrid. You must not try and spare me. I want to know everything. I want to know the worst.
Splendid. Splendid. That's the right way to look at things, Miss Vole. Now, we're not going to give way to despondency or alarm. We're going to look at things in a straightforward manner. Your husband then became friends with this French about 6 weeks ago. You were aware of that?
Leonard told me he had rescued an old lady and her parcels one day in the middle of a crowded street. He told me that she had asked him to go and see her.
And he did go and see her.
Yes,
And they became great friends.
evidently.
There was no question of your accompanying your husband on any occasion.
Leonard thought it better not.
He thought it better not. Yes, and just between ourselves, why did he think it better not?
He thought Miss French would prefer it that way.
We can come back to that some other time. Your husband then became great friends with Miss French. He did her various little services, and she was a lonely old woman with time on her hands, and she found your husband's companionship congenial to her.
Leonard can be very charming.
I'm sure that he can. He felt no doubt that it was a kindly part to go and cheer up the old lady.
I dare say.
You yourself did not object to this friendship whatsoever.
I do not think I objected. No.
You have perfect trust in your husband, Miss Vole, knowing him as well as you do.
Yes, I know Leonard very well.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your calm and courage, Miss Vole, knowing as I do how devoted you are to your husband.
So you know how devoted I am to him.
Of course.
But excuse me, I'm a foreigner. I do not always understand your English terms, but isn't there a saying about knowing something of your own knowledge? You do not know how devoted I am to him of your own knowledge, do you,
No.
Sir Wilfrid?
No, that is of course true, but your husband told me.
Leonard told you how devoted I am to him.
Yes, he spoke of your devotion on the most moving of terms.
Men I often think are very stupid.
I beg your pardon.
It does not matter. Please, go on.
Indeed. Mrs. French was a woman of some considerable wealth. Like many eccentric elderly ladies, she was fond of making wills, and she had made several wills in her lifetime. Shortly after meeting your husband, she made a fresh will, and after some small bequest, she left all of her fortune to your husband.
Yes,
You know that?
I read it in the papers this evening.
Oh, yes, but before reading it in the paper, you had no idea of it. Or rather, your husband had no idea of it.
Is that what he told you?
You don't suggest anything different.
Oh no, I do not suggest anything.
It seems that Miss French looked upon Leonard rather in the light of a son or a nephew.
You think Miss French looked upon Leonard as a son?
I think so. But definitely, I think so. I think it could be regarded as quite natural given the circumstances.
That hypocrites you are in this country.
My dear Mrs. Vole,
I shocked you. I am so sorry.
you have a continental way of looking at these things, Mrs. Vole, but that is not the line to take. It would be most unwise to suggest that Mrs. French had feelings for Leonard Vole other than those of a mother, or shall we say, an aunt.
Oh, by all means, let us say an aunt, if you think it best.
One must think of the effect on the jury on all of these things, Mrs. Vole.
Yes, I also wish to do that. I have been thinking on that a good deal.
Yes, we must work together. Now, we come to the evening of October the 14th. That was just over a week ago. Do you remember that?
I remember it very well.
Leonard Vole called on Miss French that evening. The housekeeper, Jenna Mackenzie, was out. Mr. Vole played a game of double demon with Mrs. French and took leave of about 9 o'clock. He returns home on foot, he tells me, returning at 25 past 9.
25 past 9.
At 9:30, Jenna Mackenzie returned to fetch something she had forgotten. She had Miss French in the sitting room talking with a man, and she assumed that this man was Leonard Vole. Inspector Hearn says that it is this statement that has led to your husband's arrest. Mr. Vole, however, tells me that he has an absolute alibi for the time, since he was at home with you at 9:30. That is so. He was at home with you then.
Is that what Leonard told you? That he was home with me at 9:30?
Isn't it true?
But of course.
Perhaps the police have already questioned you upon this.
Yes, they came to see me yesterday evening.
And you said?
I said that he came home at 9:30 and did not go out again.
You said...
Oh. That was right, was it not?
What do you mean by that, Mrs. Vole?
That is what Leonard wants me to say. Is it not?
That's the truth, is it not?
I have to understand. To be sure, if I say that Leonard came home at 25 minutes past 9 and did not go out again, will they acquit him? Will they let him go?
If you are both speaking the truth, then they will have to acquit him.
But when I tell this to the police, I do not think they believe me.
Why don't you think they believe you?
Well, perhaps I did not say it very well.
Mrs. Vole, I don't understand your attitude in all of this.
But perhaps it is difficult.
Perhaps your husband's case is not quite clear to you.
I have already said I want to understand fully just how black the case against my husband is. I told the police Leonard came home at 9:30 and they still do not believe me. But perhaps someone saw him leaving Miss French's house or on the street on his way home.
Well, your husband cannot think of or remember anything helpful of that kind.
So it will be only his word and mine. And mine. Thank you, that is what I wanted to know.
But Miss Vole, please don't go. There is still a lot more to be discussed.
Not by me.
Why not?
I shall have to swear, shall I not, to speak the truth, the whole truth, or nothing but the truth.
That is the oath that you take.
And suppose that when you ask me, what time did Leonard Vole come home last night? I should say,
Well,
oh, there's so many things I could say.
Mrs. Vole, do you love your husband?
Leonard says I do,
Leonard Vole believes so.
but Leonard is not very clever.
Mrs. Vole, you realize that you cannot, by law, be called to give testimony damaging your husband.
How convenient.
And your husband cannot...
He is not my husband.
I'm sorry, what?
Leonard Vole is not my husband. He went to a form of marriage with me in Berlin. He married me and brought me out of the Russian zone and into this country. I did not tell him, but I had a husband living at the time.
He got you out of the Russian sector and safely to this country. You should be very grateful to him, are you?
One can get tired of gratitude.
Mrs. Vole,
Yes.
has Leonard ever injured you in any way?
Leonard injured me. He worships the ground I walk on.
And you?
You want to know too much.
Miss Vole, I think we must be quite clear about this. Your statements have been somewhat ambiguous. What exactly happened on the evening of October 14th?
Leonard came home at 25 minutes past 9 and did not go out again. I have given him an alibi. Have I not?
You have. Mrs. Vole,
Yes.
you are a very remarkable woman, Mrs. Vole.
You are satisfied? I hope.
I'll be hanged if I'm satisfied.
Nor I.
That woman, he's up to something, Joan. I don't like it.
Well, she certainly hasn't had hysterics all over the place.
No, cool as a cucumber.
What's going to happen if we put her in the witness box?
Oh, God knows.
The prosecution would break it down in no time, especially if it were Myers.
If it's not the Attorney General, it probably will be.
Then what's your line of attack?
The usual. Keep on interrupting as many objections as possible. It seems that there's a great trust between them.
Yes, but I can't understand why Leonard Vole is so convinced of her devotion.
Oh, Don't put your trust in that, Joan. Any woman can fool a man if she wants to, especially if he's in love with her.
He's in love with her, all right.
And he's the
Trust
fool.
her completely.
Never trust a German.
Lady the Queen and the prisoner at the bar whom I shall have in charge, and a true verdict give according to the evidence.
I swear by Almighty God that I will well and truly try, and true deliverance make between our sovereign Lady the Queen and the prisoner at the bar, whom I shall have in charge, and a true verdict give according to the evidence.
Leonard Vole, you are charged with the indictment putting on the 14th day of October in the county of London, murdered Emily Jane French. How say you, Leonard Vole? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Members of the jury, the prisoner stands indicted for that he on the 14th day of October murdered Emily Jane French. To this indictment he has pleaded not guilty, and is your charge to say, having heard the evidence, whether he be guilty or not.
One moment, Mrs. Myers, one moment. Members of the jury, the proper time for me to sum up the evidence to you and instruct you as to the law is after you have heard all the evidence. But because there has been quite a considerable amount of publicity about this case in the press, I would like to say this to you now. You swore to try this case on the evidence. That means on what you are about to hear and see. It does not mean you are going to take into account anything you have heard or read before taking your oaths. You must shut out from your mind everything except which will take place here in this court. You must not let anything else influence you in favor of or against the prisoner, Leonard Vole. I am quite sure you will do your duty conscientiously in the way that is due. Now, Mrs. Myers.
May it please you, my lady, members of the jury, I appear for this case with my learned friend, Sir Wilfred Robards, for the defence. This is a case of murder. The facts are simple and to a certain point are not in dispute. You will hear the prisoner, and others you may think not an attractive man, came to make the acquaintance of Miss Emily Jane French, the woman of 56, humbly treated by her with kindness and even with affection. The nature of that affection you will have to decide for yourselves. Dr. White will tell you that in his opinion death occurred sometime between 9:30 and 10 on the night of the 14th of October last. You will hear the story of Jennifer Mackenzie, Miss French's faithful and devoted housekeeper. The 14th of October, it was a Friday, which was Mackenzie's night out. But on this occasion, she happened to return home for a few minutes at 25 minutes past 9. She left herself in with a key, and upon going upstairs to her room, she passed by the door of the sitting room. She will tell you that in the sitting room, she heard the voices of Miss Emily French, and of the prisoner, Leonard Vole.
That's not true, it wasn't me.
Janet Mackenzie was surprised, since as far as she knew, Miss French had not expected Leonard Vole to call that evening. However, she went out again, and when she returned finally at 11, she found Miss Emily French murdered. The room in disorder, the window smashed, and the curtains blowing wildly. Horror-stricken, Janet Mackenzie rang the police. I should tell you that the prisoner was arrested on October 20th. It is the case of the prosecution that Miss Emily Jane French was murdered between 9:30 and 10 p.m. on the night of the 14th of October last by a blow from a posh, and that blow was struck by the prisoner. I shall now call Inspector Hearn.
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Robert Hearn, Detective Inspector, Criminal Investigation Department, New Scotland Yard.
Now, Inspector, on the evening of the 14th of October last, were you on duty when you received emergency call?
Yes, I was.
What did you do?
With Sergeant Randall, I proceeded to 23 Ashman Grove. I was admitted to the house and established that the occupant, whom I later ascertained to be Miss Emily French, was dead. She was lying on her face and had received severe injuries to the back of her head. An attempt had been made to force one of the windows open with some implement that might have been a chisel. The window was broken near the catch. There's glass strewn about the floor, and I also later found fragments of glass on the outside of the window.
Is there any particular significance in finding glass both inside and outside the window?
Yes, the glass on the outside of the window was not consistent with the window having been forced from the outside.
You mean that if it had been done from the inside, there had been an attempt to make it look as though it had been done from the outside?
My lady, I must object. My learned friend is attempting to put words into the witness's mouth.
You have been engaged on several cases of burglary and housebreaking.
Yes,
And any other case where the window has been forced from the outside, where's the glass?
on the inside.
And any other case where a window has been forced from the outside, have you ever found glass some distance below on the ground?
No.
Will you go on?
A search was made, photographs were taken, the place was fingerprinted.
What fingerprints did you discover?
Those of Miss Emily French herself, those of Janet Mackenzie, and also those which proved later to be of the prisoner, Leonard Vole.
No others.
No others.
And did you subsequently have an interview with Mr. Vole?
Yes, Janet Mackenzie was not able to give me his address, but as a result of the broadcast appeal in the newspaper announcement, he came and found me.
And on October the 20th when arrested, what did the prison say?
He replied, "Okay, I'm ready."
Now, you say the room had the appearance of burglary having been committed.
That is just what the inspector did not say. If your ladyship remembers, that was a suggestion made by my friend, and quite inappropriately made, to which I objected.
You are quite right, Sir Wilfrid. At the same time, I am not sure that this witness is not competent to give evidence which might tend to prove that the disorder of the room was not the work of a person who broke in from the outside for the purpose of robbery.
Perhaps if I phrased my question in this way, my friend would be satisfied. Inspector, could you tell from what you saw whether there had or had not been a bona fide breaking in from the
Really,
outside?
my lady, I must continue my objection. My learned friend is again seeking to obtain an opinion from this witness.
I think you ought to do a little better job than that, Mrs. Myers.
Did you find anything inconsistent with the breaking in from the outside?
Only the glass.
Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Mrs. Myers, we have all drawn a blank here.
Was Miss French wearing jewelry the night?
Yes, she was, as a matter of fact. She was wearing a diamond brooch, 2 diamond rings, value of about 900 pounds.
And this was left untouched?
Yes, nothing was touched.
Was in fact anything taken?
According to Janet Mackenzie, nothing was missing.
In your experience, when anyone breaks into a house, do they leave without taking anything?
Not unless they're interrupted, that is.
But in this case, it does not seem as if the burglar was interrupted.
No, it does not.
Do you produce a jacket, Inspector?
Yes, I do.
Is that it?
Yes, that is it.
From where did you get it?
I found it at the prisoner's flat sometime after he was arrested, and I handed it to Mrs. Clegg at the lab to test for possible bloodstains.
Lastly, Inspector, do you produce the will of Miss Emily French?
Yes, I do.
Dated October the 8th?
Yes, that is it, October the 8th.
After certain requests, the residue is left to the prisoner?
Yes, indeed.
And what is the net value that is made?
Let me check my notes. As far as can be ascertained at the moment, about 85,000 pounds.
Inspector Hearn, you say that the only fingerprints you found at the estate of Miss French were those of Miss French herself, Janet Mackenzie, and Leonard Vole. When a burglar breaks in, does he usually leave fingerprints or does he wear gloves?
He wears gloves.
Almost invariably.
Yes, indeed, almost invariably.
So, in the case of a robbery, the absence of fingerprints would hardly surprise you.
I suppose not.
Now, this chisel near the premises, or rather on the window, was it on the inside or outside of the casement?
On the outside.
Isn't that consistent and only consistent with the breaking in from the outside?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Could it have been done any other way?
Well, actually, you see, he could have gone outside afterward to have done that, or he could have made those marks from the inside.
From the inside, Inspector?
Yes, you see, there are 2 windows together there. Both are casements with their catching adjacent, and it would have been easy for anyone to have opened one window, reached out, and forced the catch of the other.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you find any chisel near the premises or at the prisoner's flat?
Yes.
Oh?
But it didn't match the markings on the window.
It was a windy night, was it not, on October the 14th?
Windy, check my notes. I don't recall.
My learned friend says that John McKinnon noticed the curtains were blowing about. Perhaps you noticed this yourself.
Yes, I suppose they did blow about.
Indicating that it was a windy night. Isn't it possible that if a burglar had broke the window in and then swung it back, some of the loose glass may have fallen down outside the window having been blown back violently by the wind?
Yes, I suppose it is possible.
Crimes of violence, as we all are unhappily aware, have been much on the increase lately. Would you agree?
A little above normal.
Let us take the case that some young thugs broke in who meant to attack Miss French and steal. Isn't it possible that if they had caught Miss French and found that she was dead, they would be too afraid to take anything in the nature of jewelry or anything at all?
I submit that it is entirely impossible for Inspector Hearn to guess what went on in the minds of some entirely hypothetical criminals who may not even exist.
The prisoner came forward on his own account and gave his statement quite willingly.
Yes, he did.
Is it the case that at all times the prisoner has protested his innocence?
Yes.
Inspector Hearn, will you kindly examine that knife?
Yes, that.
Have you seen that knife before?
I may have.
This is the knife taken from the kitchen table on Leonard Vaux's flat, and which was brought to your attention on the first interview of your interview with the prisoner's wife.
Miss, my lady, to save time of the court, I would like to today say that we accept this knife as being in the possession of Leonard Vaux and given to the inspector by Mrs. Vaux.
That is correct.
That is correct.
It is what I understand as a French vegetable knife.
I believe so.
Just test the edge of it with your finger carefully. Would you agree that the point and cutting edge are razor sharp?
Yes, quite sharp.
And if you were cutting, say, ham, carving it, that is, and you cut and your hand slip with this knife, it would be capable of producing a cut which would bleed profusely.
I object! That is a matter of opinion, and medical opinion at that!
I withdraw the question. I will ask you instead, Inspector, if, when questioned to the prisoner as to the stains on the sleeve of his jacket, he drew your attention to a recently healed scar on his wrist and said that the cut had been caused by a cut on his wrist while he was slicing ham.
That is what he said.
And you were told the same thing by the prisoner's wife.
The first time, but afterwards.
A simple yes or no, please. Did the prisoner's wife tell you that her husband had cut his wrist slicing ham?
Yes, she did.
Thank you.
What first drew your attention to that jacket, Inspector?
The sleeve appeared to have been recently washed.
And you were told this story about an accident with a kitchen knife?
Yes.
And your attention was drawn to a scar on the prisoner's wrist?
Yes.
Granted that this scar was made by this particular knife, was there any evidence to suggest whether it had been done on accident or deliberately?
My lady, if my learned friend is going to answer her own questions, the presence of a witness seems superfluous.
I withdraw the question. Thank you, Inspector.
Thank you.
Call Dr. Wyatt. Dr. Wyatt?
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Dr. Wyatt.
Yes.
You are a police surgeon attached to the Hampstead Division.
Yes.
Would you kindly tell the jury in your own words about what you know about the death of Miss Emily Jane French?
Sir. At 11 p.m. on October 14th, I saw the dead body of the woman who subsequently proved to be Miss Emily Jane French. My examination of the body and other factors, I was of the opinion that the blow had been struck from the back of the head by an item such as the collar. Death would have been practically instantaneous. From temperature of the body and other factors, I placed the time of death at not less than an hour before and not more than, say, an hour and a half. That is to say, between the hours of 9:30 and 10 p.m.
Had Miss French struggled with her adversary at all?
No.
Dr. Wyatt, you said that there was one blow. Where had it been struck? There was only one blow, was there not?
Yes, at the left side of the Eusterian.
I beg your pardon, where?
The Eusterian, at the junction of the parietal, occipital, and temporal bones.
Indeed, and in layman's terms, where is that?
At the left side, directly behind the ear.
And would that indicate that the blow had been struck by a left-handed person?
It's difficult to say. The blow appeared to have been struck directly from behind because the bruising ran perpendicularly. I should say, it's rather impossible to say whether the blow was struck by a right or a left-handed man.
No, we don't know yet that it was a man, Doctor, but would you say, if anything, it is more likely to have been delivered by a left-handed person?
That is possible, but I would prefer to say that it is uncertain.
And at the moment the blow was struck, would blood have been likely to have gotten on the hand or arm that delivered it?
Certainly.
And only on that hand or arm?
Possibly only on that hand to arm, but it's difficult to be dogmatic.
Indeed. Now, would great strength have been needed to strike such a blow?
No great strength would have been needed.
So it would not have necessarily had to have been a man. A woman could have done so equally as well.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Hold on, Mackenzie.
Janet Mackenzie.
Janet Mackenzie.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your name is Janet Mackenzie.
That's my name.
You were the companion housekeeper to the late Miss Emily French.
I was a housekeeper. I've no opinion of companions, poor fellows' bodies. Afraid to do a bit of honest domestic work.
Quite so, quite so. I meant only that you were held in esteem and affection by Miss French, and were on friendly terms together, not quite those of mistress and servant.
20 years I've been with her and looked after her. She knew me and she trusted me, and many's the time I've prevented her from doing a foolish action. Miss Mackenzie, would you please address your remarks to the jury?
What sort of person was Miss French?
She was a warm-hearted body. Too warm-hearted at times, I was thinking. A wee bit impulsive, too. There were times when she'd have no sense at all. She was easily flattered, you see.
When did you first see the prisoner Leonard Ball?
He came to the house, I mind, at the end of August.
How often did he come to the house?
To begin with, once a week, but later it was often. 2 and 3 times he'd come round, sitting there flattering her, telling her how young she looked and noticing any new clothes she was wearing.
Quite. Now, will you tell the jury in your own words about the events of October the 14th?
It was Friday and my night out. I was going around to visit some friends of mine in Glenster Road, which is not above the 3 minutes walk. I left the house at 7:30. I'd promised to bring my friend the pattern of a knitted cardigan she admired, but when I got there I found I left behind, so after supper I said I'd slip back and get it, as it was a fine night and no distance. I returned to the house at 9:25, and I let myself in with my key, went past the sitting room door, up to my room, and as I passed the door, I heard the prisoner and they're talking to Miss French.
You were sure it was the prisoner you heard?
I know his voice well enough. An agreeable voice it was, I'll not say it wasn't. Talking and laughing they were. But it was no business of mine, so I went upstairs, got my pattern and went back to my friend.
Now, I want these times very exact. You say you re-entered the house at minutes past 9.
It was just after 9:20 when I left Glenster Road.
How do you know that, Miss Mackenzie?
The clock on my friend's mantelpiece, and I compared it with my watch, and the time was the same.
And you say it takes 3 or 4 minutes to walk, so that you arrived there?
I was there under 10 minutes. It took me a second to search for the pattern, as I wasn't sure I left it.
What did you do next?
I went back to my friend in Glenster Road. She was delighted with the pattern, simply delighted. I stayed there until 11:20, then I said goodnight to them, then went back home to see if the mistress wanted anything before bed.
What did you see?
She was there with the full poor body her head beaten in. All of the drawers of the bureau out on the ground, everything tossed hither and thither, the broken vase on the floor and the curtains flying in the wind.
What did you do?
I rang the police.
Did you really think a burglary had occurred?
Really, my lady, I must protest.
You are quite right, Sir Wilfrid. Mrs. Myers, that question should have never been addressed to the witness. I will not allow it to be answered.
Then let me ask you this, Miss Mackenzie. What did you do after you had telephoned to the police?
I searched the house.
What for?
For an intruder?
Did you find one?
I did not. Not any signs of disturbance save in the city.
Did the prisoner ever help Miss French with her business affairs, with her income tax returns, for instance?
Not that there was any need of it.
What do you mean by not being needed?
Miss French had a good, clear head for business.
Were you aware of what arrangements Miss French had made for the disposal of her money in the event of her death?
She'd make a will if the fancy took her. She was a rich one with lots of money to leave and no near relatives. It must go where it can do the most good, Janet, she'd say. Once it was to the orphan, she left it, another time to a dispensary for cats and dogs, and another time to an old people's home. But it all comes to the same in the end. She'd quarrel with people, come home, tear up the will, and make a new one.
Do you know when she made her last will?
She made it on October the 8th. I heard her speaking to Mr. Stokes, the lawyer, saying he was to come round that she was making a new will. He was there at the time, prisoner, I mean, kind of protesting, saying no, no. And the mistress said, but I want to, my dear boy, I want to. Remember that day I was almost run over by a bus? It might happen any time.
Do you know when your mistress made a will previous to that one?
In the spring it was.
Were you aware that Leonard Ball was a married man?
No, indeed. Neither was the mistress.
I object. What Miss French knew or did not know is pure prejudice on the witness's part.
You say you formed the opinion that Miss French thought Leonard Ball was a single man. Have you any facts to support that opinion?
There were the books she'd ordered from the library. There was the Life of Baroness Bedencoats and the one about Disraeli and his wife.
Both about women who married men years younger than themselves. I knew what she was thinking.
I'm afraid we cannot admit that.
Why?
Members of the jury, it is possible for a woman to read the life of Disraeli without contemplating marriage with a man younger than herself.
Did Mrs. Vole ever mention a wife?
Never.
Thank you.
Miss Mackenzie, I'm sure we all appreciate how devoted you are to your mistress.
I was.
You had a great influence over her?
Maybe.
In the last will Miss French made, that is to say the one last spring, she left you and all of her fortune to you, is that correct?
She told me so. All crooks, these charities, expenses here and expenses there, and the money never going to the object you do it for.
Yes.
I've left it to you, Janet, and you can do what you think is right and good with it.
That was an expression of great trust on her part. In her present will, I understand, she has merely left you an annuity. The principal beneficiary is the prisoner Leonard Vole.
It'll be a wicked injustice if he ever touches a penny of that money.
Miss French had not many friends or acquaintances. Why was that?
She didn't go out much.
So that when Miss French struck up this friendship with Leonard Vole, it made you quite sore and angry, didn't it?
I didn't like seeing my dear lady imposed.
But you have admitted that he did not impose upon her. Perhaps what you mean is that you didn't like to see someone else supplanting you as an influence upon Miss French.
She leaned on him a good deal, far more than was safe, I thought.
Far more than you personally liked.
Of course, I've said so. But it was of her good, I was thinking.
So the prisoner had a great influence for Miss French, and she had a great affection for him.
That's what it had come to.
So that if the prisoner had ever asked her for any money, she would have most definitely given him some.
I've not said that.
But he never received any money from her.
That may not have been for want of trying.
Returning to the night of October the 14th, you say that you heard Miss French talking with Leonard Vole. What did you hear them say?
I didn't hear what they actually said.
Oh. So you only heard the voices, or rather the murmur of voices?
They were laughing.
You heard a man's voice and a woman's, and they were laughing, is that right? I suggest that's exactly what you did hear. A man's voice and a woman's, and they were laughing. But you didn't hear what was said. What makes you think that the voice was that of Leonard Vole?
I know his voice well enough.
The door was closed, was it not?
It was closed.
So you heard the murmur of voices through a closed door, and you swear that one of the voices was that of Leonard Vole.
It was Leonard Vole!
You passed the door twice, once going to a room and once going out, correct?
That's so.
You were no doubt in a hurry to get your pattern and return to your friend.
I was in no particular hurry. I had the whole evening.
What I'm suggesting, Miss Mackenzie, is that you walked quickly past the door on both occasions.
I was there long enough to hear what I heard.
Oh, come now, Miss Mackenzie. I'm sure you don't want to suggest to the jury that you were eavesdropping.
I was doing no such thing. I've got better things to do with my time.
Exactly. You are registered under the National Health Insurance.
That's so. 4 and 6 pence every week I've got to pay. It's a terrible lot for a working woman.
I understand you recently applied for a national hearing apparatus.
6 months ago I applied for it and not got it yet.
So your hearing isn't very good, is that right? When I say to you, Miss Mackenzie, that you could not possibly recognize a voice through a closed door, what do you answer? Can you tell me what I said?
I can't hear anyone if they mumble.
In fact, you did not hear what I said. although I am only a few feet from you in an open court. Yet you say that behind a closed door, with two people talking in ordinary conversational tone, you definitely recognize the voice of Leonard Vole as you swept past the door on 2 occasions.
It was him! I tell you it was him!
What you mean is that you wanted it to be him. You have a preconceived notion.
Who else could it have been?
Exactly. Who else could it have been? That was the way your mind worked. Now tell me, was Miss French often lonely all by herself in the evening?
No, she was not lonely. She had the books from the library.
She listened to the wireless, perhaps?
Aye, she listened to the wireless.
Fond of a talk on it or a good play?
She liked a good play.
Isn't it possible that when you passed the sitting room door, what you heard was a man's voice and a woman's and laughter because the wireless was switched on? There was a play that night called Lover's Leap.
It was not the wireless.
Why not?
The wireless was being away repaired that week.
No. Miss Mackenzie, it must have upset you very greatly if you thought that Miss French intended to marry the prisoner.
Naturally it would upset me. It was a daft thing to do.
For one thing, if she had married him, isn't it possible that he could have persuaded her to dismiss you?
She'd never have done that after all these years.
But you never know what anyone will do you? Not if they're greatly influenced by anyone.
He would have used his influence. Oh yes, he would have done his best to make her get rid of me.
I see. You felt the prisoner was a very real menace to your present way of life at the time.
He'd have changed everything.
Indeed. No wonder you felt so bitterly against the prisoner.
My learned friend has made great pains to extract your prohibition of indignance towards the prisoner.
Oh, a painless extraction, quite painless.
Did you really believe your wish was right to marry the prisoner?
Indeed I did. I've just said so.
Had the prisoner such an influence over Miss French that you could persuaded her to dismiss you?
I'd like to have seen him try. He'd never have succeeded.
Had the prisoner ever shown dislike of you in any way?
No, he had his manners.
Lastly, Miss Mackenzie, you say you recognized Leonard Vole's voice through that closed door. Will you tell the jury how you knew it was his?
You know a person's voice without hearing exactly what they're saying.
Thank you, Miss Mackenzie. Good morning. Call Cora Clay.
Cora Clay?
I swear by Almighty God and evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You are Cora Clay.
Yes, ma'am.
You are an assistant in the forensic laboratory at New Scotland Yard.
Yes, I am.
Do you recognize that coat?
Yes, it was given to me by Inspector Heard and tested by me for traces of blood.
Can you tell me your findings?
The coat sleeves had been washed, though not properly pressed afterwards. But by certain tests, I am able to state that there are traces of blood on the cuffs.
Was this blood of a special group or type?
Yes, it was of the type O.
And were you also given a sample of blood test?
Yes, I was given a sample labeled blood Miss Emily French. It was of the same type, O.
Miss Clegg, you said that there were blood on both cuffs.
Yes.
I suggest that there was only blood on one cuff, the left one.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
And it was only the left sleeve that was washed.
Yes.
Were you aware that the prisoner had told the police that he had gotten blood on that sleeve from a cut on his wrist?
So I understand.
I have here a certificate stating that Leonard Vole is a blood donor at the North London Hospital and that his blood group is of the type O. That is of the same blood group, is it not?
Yes.
So the blood might have easily come from a cut on the prisoner's wrist.
That's so.
Thank you.
Blood group O is a very common one, is it not?
Oh, yes. And there's 42% of people on blood group O.
Thank you, Doctor. Call Romaine Alga.
Silence. Romaine Alga.
Romaine.
Almighty God, that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Lorraine Alga.
Yes.
You've been acting as wife of prisoner, not involved.
Yes.
Are you actually his wife?
He went to a form of marriage with me in Berlin. My former husband is still alive, so the marriage is not valid.
My lady, I have the most serious objection to this witness giving testimony at all. We have the undeniable fact of marriage between these two, and no evidence whatsoever of this so-called previous marriage.
If my learned friend had not abandoned his customary patience and had waited for one more question, your ladyship would have been spared this further interruption. Miss Alga, is this a certificate of marriage between yourself and Otto Guth Alga, dated April the 14th, 1986?
It is.
I should like to see that certificate. I think it will be exhibit number 4, am I correct?
I believe it will be, my lady.
Sir Winfrey, this witness is competent to give evidence.
Miss Alga, in any event, are you willing to give evidence against the man you have been calling your husband?
I'm quite willing.
Oh, May, what are you doing here? What are you saying?
Leonard Wold, you shall remain silent, as your counsel will tell you. You will very shortly have the opportunity to speak in your own defense.
Will you tell me in your own words about the events of October 14th?
I was at home all the evening.
And then Wold?
Leonard went out at 10:30.
When did he return?
10 minutes past 10.
That's not true. You know it was 9:25. You know it was. Who's been making you say this?
Leonard Wold returned 10 minutes past 10. What happens next?
He was breathing hard, very excited. He threw off his coat and examined his sleeves. He asked me to watch the cuffs. They had blood on them.
Did he speak about the blood?
He said, "Blast, there's blood on them."
What did you say?
I said, "Leonard, what have you done?"
And what did the prisoner say to that?
He said, "I killed her."
I never said that. Not a word of this is true.
The prisoner said, "I have killed her." Did you know to whom he referred?
Yes, it was the old woman he had been going to see so often.
What happens next?
He asked me to say that he was at home with me all that evening. Especially I was to say at 9:30. I said, "Leonard, do the police know you've killed her?" And he said, "No, they will think it's a burglary. But anyways, remember, I was at home with you at 9:30.
And you were subsequently interrogated by the police?
Yes.
Did they ask you if Leonard Wold was at home with you at 9:30?
Yes.
And what did you answer to that?
I said that he was.
But you've changed your story now. Why?
Because it is murder. I cannot go on lying to save him. I'm grateful to him, yes. He married me and brought me to this country. But he has asked me to do all this I have done because I was grateful.
Because you loved him?
No, I never loved him.
Romaine.
I never loved him.
You were grateful to the prisoner. He brought you to this country, he asked you to give him an alibi, and at first you consented. But later he felt that what you had done was wrong.
Yes, that is it exactly.
Why did you feel it was wrong?
That is murder. I cannot come into court and lie and say he was with me at the time it was done. I cannot do it. I cannot do it.
So what did you do?
I did not know what to do. I do not know your country and I am afraid of the police. So I write a letter to my ambassador. I tell him I do not wish to tell any more lies. I wish to speak the truth.
That is the truth. That Leonard Wold returned home at 10 minutes past 10. That there was blood on the sleeves of his coat. That he definitely admitted to you that he had killed her. That is the truth before God?
That is the truth.
Miss Alga, when you went through this previous form of marriage with your husband, was he aware that your other husband was still alive?
No.
And he acted in good faith?
Yes.
And you were grateful?
I was grateful to him, yes.
You showed your gratitude by coming here and testifying against him.
I have to speak the truth.
Is it the truth?
Yes.
I suggested to you
that on the night of October the 14th, Leonard Vole was at home with you at 9:30, the time that the murder was committed. I suggest to you that this whole story of yours is a wicked fabrication, and that for you, for some reason, have a grudge against the prisoner, and this is your way of expressing it.
No.
Miss Alger, you appreciate that you are still under oath.
Yes.
I warn you, Mrs. Alger, that if you care nothing for the prisoner, be careful on your own account. The penalty for perjury is heavy.
Really, my lady, I don't know these theatrical outbursts put benefit of the jury. I do most respectfully submit that there is nothing to say that the evidence that this witness has given has been anything but the truth.
Mrs. Myers, this is capital charge, and within the bounds of reason, I would like the defense to have every latitude.
Miss Alger, you have said that there was blood on both cuffs.
Yes.
Both cuffs?
That is what Leonard told me to say.
Yes, and you have said, he told me to wash the cuffs, they had blood on them. You were saying that you had washed both of the cuffs.
My lady, it is my friend's turn to be inaccurate now. Nowhere has this witness stated that she washed both cuffs, or indeed that she washed even one.
My friend is right. Well, you washed the sleeves.
I remember now. It was only one sleeve that I washed.
Thank you. Perhaps your memory as to other parts of your story is equally untrustworthy. I understand that your original story to the police was that the blood had been caused from a cut on the prisoner's wrist while he was carving ham.
I said that, but it was not true.
Why did you lie?
Because that is what Leonard told me to say.
Even going so far as to produce the actual knife with which he cut his wrist?
When Leonard saw he had blood on his wrist, he cut himself to make it seem that the blood was...
I never did.
Please. Miss Alger, the question is whether you were lying then or whether you were lying now. If you had really been appalled at the murder having been committed, you could have told the truth to the police the first time that they questioned you.
I was afraid of Leonard.
Afraid of Leonard Vole? Afraid of the man whose heart and soul you've just crushed? I think the jury will know which of you to believe.
Romain Alger, I ask you once more, is the evidence you have given the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
My lady, that is the case for the prosecution.
Romain.
Members of the jury, I will not submit to you, as I might, that there is no case for the prisoner's answer. There is a case of very strong circumstantial evidence. You have heard expert witnesses give their testimony, as is their duty. Against them I have nothing to say. On the other hand, you have heard Jenna McKinsey and the woman who calls herself Romain Vole. Can you believe that their testimony is not warped? Jenna McKinsey cut out of her rich mistress's will because she was usurped quite unwittingly by this unfortunate boy. Romain Vole, Alger, whatever she calls herself, who trapped him into marriage whilst concealing from him the fact that she was married already. That woman owes him everything, yet she admits no love for him. He has served his purpose. I will ask you to be very careful how you believe her testimony. The testimony of a woman who, for all we know, has been brought up to believe the pernicious doctrine that lying is a weapon to be used to serve one's own ends. Members of the jury, I call the prisoner Leonard Vole.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mr. Vole, we have heard of your friendship with Miss French. I want you to tell us how often you went and visited her.
Frequently.
Why was that?
I was awfully fond of her. She was like my Aunt Betsy.
That was an act who brought you up?
Yes, she was a dear. Miss French reminded me of her.
And you have heard Jenna McKinsey say that Miss French thought you were a single man and that there was some question of marrying you. Is there any truth in this?
Of course not. It's an absurd idea.
So there was actually no question of marriage between you?
No.
It looks as though Mrs. French looked upon you in the light of a mother.
Yes, almost an indulgent aunt, say.
Yes, and in return you did everything for her that you could.
I was very fond of her.
Will you please tell the jury what exactly happened on the night of October the 14th?
Well, I'd come across kind of a cat brush, a new sort of thing that night, and I thought it would please her. I went up there that evening and to give it to her.
What time was that?
I should say about 7:45. Anyway, I gave her the cat brush and she was pleased. We tried it out on one of the cats and it was a success. After that, we played a game of Double Demon. Miss French was very fond of Double Demon, and then I went home.
Yes.
Sir Wilfrid, I do not understand this piece of evidence at all. What is that?
And it's a brush for brushing cats.
Oh.
A sort of brushing line, a normal sort of thing in that line, and I thought it would please her.
Did you see Janet McKinsey?
No, Miss French let me in herself.
Did you know that she was out?
I didn't think about it.
And what time did you leave?
I left it a little bit before 9.
And how did you get home?
I walked.
How long did that take you?
About 25 minutes.
So that you reached home?
I reached home in 25 minutes past 9.
Yes. And your wife? I will call her your wife. Was at home then?
Of course she wasn't. I think she must have gone mad. I don't know.
Never mind that now, Mr. Holmes. Go on with your story. Did you wash your coat?
Of course I didn't.
Who did wash your coat?
Romaine did the next morning. She said it got blood on it from a cut on my wrist.
A cut on your wrist?
Yes. Here, you can still see the mark.
When was the first you heard of the murder?
I read it about it in the evening paper the next day.
And what did you feel?
I was stunned. I could hardly believe it. I was awfully upset too. The paper said it was a burglary. I never dreamed of anything else.
And what happened next?
Well, the paper said the police were anxious to interview me, so I went along to the police station.
You went along to the police station and made a statement?
Yes.
You were not nervous or reluctant to do so?
No, I wanted to help in any way possible.
Did you ever receive any money from Mrs. Finch?
No, I didn't.
Were you aware that she had made a will in your favor?
Well, she said she was ringing up her lawyers and was going to make a new will, and I asked if she made new wills often, and she said from time to time.
Did you know the terms of this new will?
I swear I didn't.
Did she ever suggest to you that she would leave anything to you at all in a will?
No.
Right. You have heard the testimony of your wife, or the woman who you consider as your wife.
I heard. I can't understand.
Mr. Vole, I understand you are very upset. I want to ask you to put aside all of your emotion and answer the question plainly and simply. Was what the witness said true or untrue?
Of course it wasn't true.
You arrived home at 9:25.
Yes.
Did you go out again?
No.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Now, Mr. Vole, I'm going to ask you just one more question. Did you kill Emily French?
No, I did not.
Thank you.
Have you ever tried to get some money out of anybody?
No.
How did you your acquaintance with Miss French? Did you learn that she was a very wealthy woman?
Well, I didn't know that she was rich when I first went to see her.
But having gained that knowledge, you decided to cultivate her acquaintance further.
I suppose that's what it looks like, but I tell you I liked her. Money had nothing to do with it.
You would have continued to visit her no matter how poor she'd been.
Yes.
You yourself are in poor circumstances.
You know I am.
Kindly answer the question, yes or no.
You must answer the question yes or no.
Yes.
What salary do you earn?
Well, as a matter of fact, I haven't got a job at the moment. Haven't had one for some time.
You were recently discharged from your position.
No, I wasn't. I quit.
At the time of your arrest, how much money had you in the bank?
Only a few pounds, but I was expecting some money in a week or two.
How much?
Not very much.
I put it to you. You were pretty desperate for money?
Not desperate. I just felt a bit worried.
You were worried about money. You met a wealthy woman and you courted her acquaintance assiduously.
You make it sound all twisted. I tell you I liked her.
We have heard that Miss French used to consult you on her income tax returns.
Yes, you know what those forms were. You can't make heads or tail of them, or at least she couldn't.
Dennis Mackenzie has told us that Miss French was a very good
That's not
businesswoman.
what she told me. She told me those forms were interacting terribly.
And in filling up her income tax returns, you no doubt learned the exact amount of her income. No.
I mean, naturally, yes.
Yes, very convenient. How was it, Mr. Bole, that you never took your wife to see Miss French?
I don't know. It just didn't seem to crop up.
You say Miss French knew you were married.
Yes.
Yet she never asked you to bring your wife with you to the house.
No.
Why not?
I don't know. She didn't like women, I don't think.
She preferred, shall we say, personable young men. And you didn't insist on bringing your wife.
No, of course I didn't. Well, she seemed to think that my wife didn't get on. I mean, she knew she was a foreigner and she thought that.
That was the impression you gave
No,
her?
it wasn't, but I think it was wishful thinking on her part.
You mean she was infatuated?
No, she wasn't infatuated with me, but she was... Oh, it's like mothers are sometimes with the son.
How?
Not wanting him to meet a girl or get engaged or anything of the kind.
You hoped, didn't you, for some sort of monetary advantage from your friendship
Not
with
in
this
the way
French?
you mean.
Not in the way I mean. You seem to know what I mean better than I know myself. In what way did you hope for monetary advantage? I repeat, in what way did you hope for monetary advantage?
Well, you see, there's this sort of gadget for a car, sort of a windscreen wiper that works in the snow, and I was looking for someone to finance it, and I was hoping Miss French would. You see, but that wasn't the only reason I went to see her. I tell you, I liked her.
Yes, we've heard that quite often, haven't we? How much you liked her.
Well, it's true.
I believe, Mr. Bowman, about a week before Miss French's death, you were making inquiries of particulars of foreign cruises?
Supposing I did, it's not a crime, is it?
Oh, of course not. Many people go for cruises when they can pay for it. But you couldn't pay for it, could you, Mr. Bowman?
I didn't expect to pay for it.
You admit that you asked not for particulars, not of the cheap trips, but of the most expensive and luxurious cruises. How did you expect to pay for such a thing?
I did it.
I suggest that you knew that in a week's time, you would inherit a large sum of money from a trusting elderly lady.
I knew nothing of the kind. I was just feeling fed up, and I was walking past the window and saw the posters, all palm trees and blue skies and coconuts, and I went in and asked. The clerk gave me a sort of supercilious look. I was a bit shabby, but it riled me, so I put on a bit of an act and began asking for the swankiest tours there were, of the Lux and cabin on the boat deck.
You really expect the jury to believe that?
I don't expect anyone to believe anything, but that's the way it was. It was make-believe and childish, if you wish, but it was fun and I enjoyed it. I wasn't thinking of inheriting money or of killing anyone.
So it was just a remarkable coincidence that Mrs. French should be killed, leaving you her heir only a few days later.
I tell you, I didn't kill her.
Your story is from the night of October the 14th. You left Miss French's house at 4 minutes to 9, that you walked home and arrived at 25 minutes past 9, and you did not go out again.
Yes.
You've heard the woman Romaine Alger review that story in court. You have heard her say that she came in not at 25 past 9, but at 10 minutes past 10, that your clothes were bloodstained, and that you definitely admitted to her that you had killed Miss French.
It's not true. I tell you not a word of that.
You
It's
suggest
true.
any reason why the woman who has been acting as your wife would give the evidence she has given if it were not true.
No, I can't. That's the awful thing. And she must have gone mad.
You think she must have gone mad? She seemed extremely sane and self-possessed, but insanity is the only reason you can suggest.
God, what's changed or what's happened to her?
Very effective, I'm sure, but in this court we deal with facts. And the fact is, Miss Ball, that we have only your word for it that you arrived home at the time you say you
But
did.
someone must have seen me in the street.
One
going into the
person who
house.
thinks so, but the only person who did see you come home last night says it was at 10 minutes past 10. And that person says you had blood on your clothes.
But I cut my wrist.
A very easy thing to do with
My lady, I object.
You twist everything. You twist everything I say.
You cut your wrist.
I object. My lady, I object. My lady.
Emily French!
I didn't do it! Oh God, I never killed her. I never killed anybody. Oh God, it's some kind of nightmare, some kind of awful, evil dream.
We come out of a stuffy courtroom, gasping for fresh air, and what do we find? More fog.
Well, it's not as thick as the fog weighing over Miss Alger's antics.
No, that sobbing woman. From the very first moment I laid eyes on her, I scented trouble. I knew she was up to something, Joan. A thoroughly vindictive piece of goods, and far too deep for that young fool on the dock. But what is her game, Joan? Tell me that.
Presumably, it would seem to get young Annabelle convicted of murder.
And look what he's done for her.
Well, he's probably done too much for her.
And she despises him for it. Likely enough. Ungrateful beasts, women. But why be vindictive? If she was bored with him, all she had to do was leave. There doesn't seem to be any financial reason for her to remain with him.
I brought you a tea, Sir Wilfrid, and a cup for Mrs. Mayhew, too.
Tea, a strong drink is what we need.
Oh, you know you like your tea, Sir Wilfrid. How did it go today?
Badly.
Well, you know he didn't do it. I'm sure he did it.
You're still convinced he didn't do it. Why?
Oh, because he's not the sort. He's nice. You know what I mean? Ever so nice. And he wouldn't go coshing an old lady in the head. But you'll get him off, won't you?
I'll get him off. God knows how, though. Only 3 women on the jury. Pity. Evidently the women like him. Can't think why, though. He's not particularly good-looking. Perhaps he's got something that arouses the maternal instinct. Women want to mother him.
Whereas Mrs. Ilegate is not the maternal type.
No, she's the passionate sort. Hot-blooded behind that cool self-control. The type of woman that would knife a man if he double-crossed her. But I can't understand. Oh, she's so confusing, Joan. I'd love to break her down, show up her lies, show her for what she really is.
Forgive me, Wilfred, but aren't you letting this case become a bit of a personal duel between you and her?
Am I? Perhaps I am, Joan, but she's an evil woman, and I am convinced of that. And a young man's life depends on that duel.
Well, I don't think the jury liked her.
No, you're right there, Joan. First of all, she's a foreigner, and they distrust foreigners. Then, she's not married to the fellow, so she's more or less admitting to committing bigamy. Also, she's not sticking to her man while he's down, and we don't like that in this country.
That's all to the good.
Yes, it is, but it isn't enough. There's no corroboration of Leonard's statements whatsoever. He admits to being with Miss French that evening. His fingerprints would be all over the place, and we can't seem to find anyone that saw him on his way home. Then there's the altogether damning matter of the will. Also, that travel agency business doesn't help either, Joan. It's quite unfortunate.
I agree, and his explanation was hardly convincing.
The old lady makes a will in his favor, and immediately he goes about inquiring luxury cruises. But, you know, Mayhew, my wife does it.
Does what?
She inquires about luxury cruises. She'll work out the whole thing to the last detail and bemoan the fact that the boat misses a connection at Bermuda. And she'll say that we could save time by flying, but that we wouldn't see anything of the country. And what do I think? And I tell her, oh, it's all the same to me, my dear, arrange it as you like. But it's sort of a game, we both know, and we'll end up doing the same old thing, staying at home.
Now with my husband, it's houses.
Houses?
Or just to view. Sometimes I think that there's hardly a house in England that hasn't been up for sale that my husband hasn't been over. He plans how to apportion the rooms and works out any structural details that should be necessary.
Well, the fantasies of our spouses aren't evidence. Worse luck, but it helps to understand why young Leonard went inquiring about travel literature.
Pipe dreams.
Indeed. It seems we've had a certain amount of luck with Jenna McKinsey.
Bias, you mean?
Yes, overdoing her prejudice.
That was a very telling point you had about the deafness.
Thank you. But she got her back over the wireless. Mayhew, what really happened that night? Was it robbery with violence after all? I mean, the police have to admit that it might have been.
But they don't really think so, and they can often make a mistake. That inspector was quite convinced that it wasn't an inside job, that the window had been tampered with from the inside.
Yes, but he may be wrong.
I wonder.
Indeed. But if so, who was the man Jenna McKinsey heard talking with Mrs. French? Seems to me that there are two answers to that.
The answers being?
First, that she wasn't completely pleased when she saw that the police weren't pleased with it being a burglary, meaning that she made it up.
Well, she certainly wouldn't do a thing like that.
Well, who wasn't then talking with Miss French? And don't tell me that it was a burglar talking amicably with Mrs. French before he crushed her on the head.
That certainly seems unlikely.
Yes. And I don't think that the rather grim old woman would be good at making up a thing like that. In fact, I don't think she'd lie about anything. No, I don't think she'd lie about anything.
Good Lord. Do you mean...
Excuse me, Sir Wilfrid. The young lady is asking to see you. She says it has to do with the case of Mr. Leonard Vaux.
Is she mental?
No, Sir Wilfrid. I can always recognize that title.
What sort of young woman?
A rather common young woman, sir, with a free way of talking.
What does she want?
Well, she says she knows something that might do the prisoner a bit of good.
Highly unlikely. Bring her in. What do you think, Joe?
Well, we can't afford to leave any stone unturned.
Agreed.
The young lady.
What's this? Oh, I'm not putting it to you!
Just a moment. This is Miss Mayhew. She is Leonard Vaux's solicitor, and I am Sir Wilfrid Roberts, counsel for the defence.
So you are, dear! Didn't recognise you there! Having a bit of a confab, are you?
come forward, giving me any evidence that may be vital.
Come off it. I didn't say I knew anything, did I? Oh, I've got something that's more to the point.
Well, what is it you've got, madam?
I saw that Trollope give her evidence today. So high and mighty about it too. She's a wicked one, a Jezebel, that's what she is.
Yes, but as to the special information that...
What's it to me? It's valuable what I've got. 100 quid. That's what I want.
I'm afraid we could not countenance anything of that character, but perhaps if you tell us what you have to offer.
So you don't buy without seeing, is that it?
Yes, we would like a butcher's.
So, what you're saying is, you want your butcher's look, is that it?
Yes.
Well, I've got the goods and are alright. It's letters. That's what it means, letters.
Letters written by Romain Vaux to the prisoner.
Poor pretty prisoner, who don't make me laugh. Taken in by your own right. Now I've got something to sell, dear, don't you forget it.
Perhaps if you let us see these letters, we would be able to tell you how pertinent they are.
Oh, putting it in your own language, aren't you? Well, as I said, I don't expect you to buy without seeing, but there's fair. If those letters will do the trick, if they'll get that boy off and put that foreign wench where she belongs, then it's 100 quid for me. Right?
If these letters contain information that is useful to the defense, and your expenses in coming here, I'm prepared to offer you £10.
£10? For letters like them? Think again!
If you have letters there that will help to prove my client's innocence, £20 I think would not be an unreasonable sum.
50, it's a bargain.
£20.
Fine. Blast you, and take them. Quite a packet of them, aren't there? The top one's the one who'll do the trick.
Just a moment. I suppose this is her handwriting.
Yeah, it's her handwriting all right, it's all fair and square.
We shall only have your word for that.
Just a moment, I have a letter from Mrs. Vaux, not here but at my office.
Indeed. Well, it seems, madam, we will have to trust you for the moment. Wow, it's incredible.
Yes, the cold-blooded vindictiveness.
How did you get a hold of these?
Well, that'll be telling.
What have you got against Romain Vaux?
See that?
Did she do that to you?
And that the chap I was going with. And going with him steady was too. I mean, he was fond of me and I loved him. And then she came along. She took a fancy to him and she snatched him right up from under me. And she started to see him on the sly and then one day he just up and cleared out. Well, I knew where he'd gone. Well, I followed him and I found them together. Well, I told her what I got, he set on me. And it was one of them razor games he was too. He cut up the face proper. And there he says, no one will ever look at you now.
Did you go to the police about it?
Me. And not likely. Besides, it wasn't his fault, not really. It was hers. All hers. Getting them away from me. Turning them against me. But I wasted my time. I followed her about. I've seen what she's been up to, and that's how I got hold of them there letters. And so now you know the whole story, mister. Let her kiss me.
I'm sorry. Terribly sorry. Got a fiver, Joan? We'll make it £25.
Out on me, will ya? Want to go up another 5 quid? Oh, I knew I was being too easy on you. But those letters are the goods, aren't they?
They will, I think, be very useful. Here, Joan, have a butcher's look at this one.
We'll have a handwriting expert on these, and he can give evidence for safety's sake.
Yes, but we shall require this man's surname and address.
Hello? Where's she gone? She mustn't leave without giving us further particulars.
Carter! Carter!
Yes, Sir Wilfrid?
Where did that young woman go?
She went straight out, sir.
Well, you shouldn't have let her go, Carter. Send Greta after her.
Very good, Sir Wilfrid.
She's
gone?
Yes, I sent Greta after her. There's no hope in this bloody fog. We shall require this man's surname and address.
We won't get it. She thought things out too carefully. Wouldn't give us her name and slipped out like an eel as soon as she saw us busy with the letters. She dare not risk having to appear in court. Look what that man did to her last time.
She would have protection.
Would she? For how long? He'd get her in the end, or his pals would. She's already risked something coming here. She doesn't want to bring the man into it. It's Romain Ilga she's after.
And what a beauty our Romain is. But at least we've got something to go on now. As to procedure.
Stand up. All persons having anything further to do before Lady Defense Justice of the Boy and Terminator, General Jail Delivery for the jurisdiction of the Central Criminal Court, join here and give your attendance. God save you.
My lady,
Yes, Sir Wilfred.
since the court was adjourned, certain evidence of a rather startling character has come into my possession, and it is because of this evidence I am taking it upon myself to ask your ladyship permission to have the previous witness for the prosecution recalled, Romain Ilga.
Oh, wow. So, Wilfred, when exactly did this evidence come to your knowledge?
Yesterday evening after court was adjourned.
Really, my lady, I must object. The case for the prosecution is closed, and there's simply no time for me to look at that.
Mrs. Myers, I have not intended on ruling on this matter without first observing the customary formality of inviting your observation on the matter. For now, I'd like to hear Sir Wilfred.
My lady, when evidence vital to the prisoner comes into possession of his legal advisers at any time before the jury have returned their verdict, I contend such evidence is not only admissible, but desirable. Happily, there is clear authority to support my case that can be found in the case of King versus Stillman, reported in 1926.
Yes, Sir Wilfred, you needn't cite the authority. I am quite aware with it. For now, I'd like to hear the prosecution.
The course my friend proposes is, save in exceptional circumstances, quite unprecedented. And what, may I ask, is this startling new evidence of which Thornton speaks?
Letters, my lady, letters written by Romain Vaux.
I should like to see these letters.
My friend was good enough to tell me only as we came into court that he intended to make this submission, so that I've had no opportunity to examine the authorities. But I seem to remember a case in, I think, 1982, the King against Porter, I believe.
No, Mrs. Myers. The King against Potter in 1981. I appeared for the half of the prosecution.
And if my memory serves me well, your ladyship, similar objection was sustained.
No, Mrs. Myers. Your memory serves you quite ill. My objection then was overruled by Mr. Justice Swindlin, as yours is now by me.
Call Romain Ilga.
Romain Ilga.
Romain Ilga. Romain!
If these letters are authentic, it raises very serious issues. Mrs. Alger, you have been recalled to this box so that Sir Wilfred may ask you further questions.
Miss Alga, you appreciate that you are still under your oath?
Yes.
Miss Alga, do you know a certain man with the Christian name Max?
I don't know what you mean.
And yet, it is a very simple question. Do you or do you not know a man called Max?
Certainly not.
Are you quite sure of that?
I've never known anyone called Max. Never.
And yet, it is a fairly common contraction of a name in your country. You mean to tell me that you have never known anyone of that name?
Well, then, yes, perhaps in Germany. I do not remember. It is a long time ago.
Oh, Miss Alga, I shall not ask you to throw your mind such a long way back as that. A few weeks will suffice. Let us say the 17th of October last.
What have you got there?
A letter.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm talking about a letter. A letter written on the 17th of October. You remember that date, perhaps?
Not particularly. But
I suggest that on that day you wrote a certain letter, a letter addressed to a man called Max.
that is nothing of the kind. These are lies you are telling. I don't know what you mean.
This was one letter of a series that was written over a considerable period of time.
Lies. All lies.
You would have seemed to have been on intimate terms with this man.
How dare you say a thing like that?
Please. I am not concerned with the general correspondence of this letter. I am only concerned with this particular one. My beloved Max, an extraordinary thing has happened. I believe all of our difficulties may be ended.
How did you get that? Who gave it to you?
How the letter came into my possession is irrelevant.
You stole it. You are a imbecility liar. Or did some jealous woman give it? I'm right, am I not?
Mrs. Alger, kindly confine your answers to Counselor's questions, please.
But I will not listen.
Proceed, Sir Wilfrid.
Thank you, my lady. So far, you have only heard the opening phrases of the letter. Am I to understand that you definitely deny writing it?
Of course I never wrote it. It is a forgery. It is an outrage that I should be forced to listen to a bunch of nonsense. Nonsense made up by a jealousy woman.
I suggest it is you who have lied. You have lied flagrantly and persistently in this court, and upon oath. And the reason why you have lied is made clear by this letter, written down by you in black and white.
That is crazy. Why should I write down a lot of nonsense?
Because a way had opened up before you to freedom, and in planning to take that way, the fact that an innocent man would be sent to his death meant nothing to you. You have even included that final deadly touch of how you yourself wounded Leonard Vole with a ham knife.
I never wrote that. I wrote that he did it to himself, cutting the ham.
So, you know what is in the letter before I have read it.
Bless you, bless you, bless you!
Even for a
Sir Wilfrid, will you please read the letter aloud so that the jury can hear?
My beloved Max, an extraordinary thing has happened. I believe all of our difficulties may be ended. I can come to you now without any fear of endangering the valuable work that you are doing in this country. The old lady I told you about has been murdered, and I think Leonard Vole is suspected. He was there earlier that night, and his fingerprints will be all over the place. 9:30 seems to be the time. Leonard Vole was home by then, but his alibi depends on me. On me. Supposing I say that he came home much later and that he had blood on his clothes. He did have blood on his sleeve because he cut his wrist at soccer. So you see, it would all fit in. I can even say that he told me that he killed her. Oh, beloved Max, tell me I can go ahead. It would be so wonderful to be free from playing the part of a loving, grateful wife. I know cause and party comes first, but if Leonard was convicted of murder, I could come to you safely and we could be together for always. Your adoring Romaine.
Mrs. Alger, will you please return to the witness box? You have heard those letters read. What have you to say?
Nothing.
Romaine, tell him you didn't write it. I know you didn't.
Of course I wrote it!
That, my lady, concludes the case for the defense.
Sir Wilfrid, do you have any knowledge as to whom these letters were addressed?
My lady, they came into my possession anonymously, and there has as yet been no further time to ascertain any facts. It would seem likely that he came to this country illegally, and he is engaged on some subversive operations here.
You will never know. I don't care what you do to me. You shall never know.
Mrs. Myers, do you wish to examine this witness?
Really, my lady, I find it somewhat difficult in view of these startling developments. Miss Alga, if you were intimidated into admitting something of distress, if you're to spirit a letter in spirit of make-believe, or in any way it's not true, just do not hesitate to say so now.
Months you go on and on torturing me. I wrote the letter. Now let me go.
My lady, I submit that this witness is in such a state of agitation that she hardly knows what she is saying or admitting.
Mrs. Myers, you may remember that Sir Wilfrid previously cautioned the witness and impressed upon her the sacred nature of the oath which she had taken. Now, Mrs. Alger, Mrs. Alger, I wish to warn you that this is not the end of the matter. In this country, you cannot commit perjury without being brought to account for it, and I have no doubt proceedings for perjury will be shortly taken against you. The sentence for perjury can be quite severe. You may step down.
Members of the jury, I'm sure no words of mine can add to the impressions made upon you today, whether it be the straightforward story which the prisoner has told, and by the wicked attempt to incriminate him, evidence of which you have just witnessed here today.
Leonard Vole, stand up. Members of the jury, are you agreed upon a verdict?
We are.
Do you find the prisoner Leonard Vole guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, my lady.
Silence.
Leonard Vole, you have been found not guilty of the murder of Emily French on October 14th. You are hereby discharged and are free to leave the court.
All persons having anything further to do with the Lady the Queen's Justice Lawyers Member, a general jail delivered to the jurisdiction of Central Criminal Court, may depart hence and give your attendance here tomorrow morning at 10:30 o'clock. God save the Queen.
I can't thank you enough.
This is the man you've got to thank.
Thank you, sir. You've got me out of a very nasty mess.
Nasty mess, do you hear that, Joan? Don't worry now, my boy. Your troubles are all over now.
But it wasn't your thing, you know.
Yes, if we hadn't been able to break that woman down
Did you have to go for the way you did? It was terrible, the way she went to pieces.
Now, listen here, Vole. You're not the first young man I've known who's loved a woman so much he's been blinded to what she's really like. That woman did her level best to put a rope around your neck.
Don't you forget it.
Yes, I guess, but there's something that I don't understand. She's always been so devoted. I just can't understand why...
Just 2 or 3 minutes at once, sir. We'll slip back to a car at the side entrance.
Is there still a crowd?
Better wait in here, miss. The crowd's in a nasty mood. I'd let them disperse before we try to leave.
Oh, no, you don't.
Are you trying to protect Leonard from me?
You've done enough harm.
But mayn't I even congratulate Leonard on being free?
In spite of you.
And rich?
Rich?
Yes, Mr. Vole, I think you shall quite inherit a great deal of money.
Oh, money doesn't seem so much to me after what I've been through. Romaine, I can't understand.
No! Tell me, do those judge's words mean I shall go to prison?
You will quite certainly be charged with perjury and tried for it. You will probably go to prison.
Oh, everything will work out fine, Romaine. Don't worry.
Well, you never
Work
see
out
sense,
well in the
Vole.
end.
Now we must consider practicalities this matter of probate.
Listen here, Mrs. Vole. I want you to know that the first time we met, I made it a note to myself to beat you at your little games, and by God, I've done it. In spite of you.
In spite of me.
You don't deny, do you, that you did your best to incriminate him?
Would they have believed me if I had said that Leonard was at home with me that night and did not go out again?
Why not?
Because they would have said to themselves, this woman loves this man. She would say or do anything for him. They would have had sympathy with me, yes. But they would not have believed me.
If you had been telling the truth, they would.
I wondered. But I did not want their sympathy. I wanted them to dislike me, to mistrust me. And then, when my life was broken down, then they believed. And so now you know the whole story, Mr. Like a kiss me.
My heavens.
Yes, it was I. I brought those letters to you. I wrote them. I was that woman. It wasn't you who bought freedom for Leonard. It was I. And because of it, I shall go to prison. But at the end of the day, me and Leonard will be together again, happy, loving each other.
My dear, but couldn't you have just trusted us? We believe you know that our British system of justice upholds the truth. We would have gotten him off.
You don't understand. You see, you thought he was innocent.
And you knew he was innocent. I understand.
But you do not understand at all. See, I knew he was guilty.
But aren't you afraid?
Afraid?
Of linking your life with the murderers?
You don't understand. We love each other.
My dear Miss Food, first time we met, I said that you were a very remarkable woman. I see no reason to change my opinion.
It's not just going in there, miss. It's all over now.
Darling, you're free. Isn't it wonderful? They've been trying to keep me out, darling. It's been awful. I've been nearly crazy. Lynn! Who is this girl?
I'm Lynn's girl. I know all about you. You're not his wife. Never have been. You're years older, and you just got a hold of him, and you've done your best to hang him, but that's all over now. We'll go away on one of your grand cruises to all those good places. It'll be a wonderful time.
Leonard! Is this true? Is she your girl?
Yes, she is.
After all I've done for you, what can she do for you that can compare with that?
She's 15 years younger than you are. I've got the money, I've been acquitted, and I can't be tried again, so don't go shooting off your mouth, or you'll just get yourself hanged as an accessory after the fact.
No. That will not happen. I shall not be tried as an accessory after the fact. I shall not be tried for perjury. I shall be tried for murder! Oh my